How many people are on, Dave? Just one?
Oh, it's like the good old days.
Not done yet.
All right. Good evening. The time is 7 p.m. and I'll now call this budget workshop meeting to order. We are continuing on from last night's budget workshop, or deliberations, I should say. Excuse me. If you go to page 5, I do have a few changes that I would like to put in. Two on the revenue side. After consulting with Tom Robinson this afternoon, on page 5, line item 00401, investment income. That can go up, we believe. So I would like to raise that to 222,000, 22,500.
222,500.
Yep, 225,000.
So
that would be an
222 or
increase-
225?
225.
Okay.
225,000. That,
225, oh, I'm sorry.
yep. So that'll be an increase of 22,500. On page 6, we also received some, interest rates have been rising. That's the reason for that. And because of that, are where we did not get a lot of revenue in the past, with the interest rates rising, we can raise that. Also, on page 6, after consulting with our assessor, the pilot communications, 00302, which is budgeted at 14,500, that can be raised to 45,000, or an increase of 30,500. This is due to mainly Frontiers work in town, and the added utilities has also increased this revenue. 302, pilot telecommunications.
Oh, so we're raising that one too.
Yes, we're raising that from 14,500 to 45,000. Yeah, yep, so good news on revenue. On page 99, I do have a slight reduction after I went through the regular payroll, and we can reduce regular payroll by 7,500. That's with no impact, but we can reduce that, which would be 496,000, 496,000, as opposed to 503,500. So with that, you have 2 increases to revenue and then 1 decrease to expenses. The combination of that is 30,500, 22,500 plus 7,500. So it's a net of 60,500.
And added to what we had last night.
Mm-hmm. So maybe I'll give Tom a minute to, I believe, Tom, did you plug in those numbers last night that we had put in? Do you know where we're at? I believe it was correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, a .01 change in the mill rate? So last night, the mill rate went from a proposed 0.96% increase to a 0.95% increase with the reductions from last night. And 225, yep, 225,000. Would you be able to calculate the mill rate, Tom? I believe if it's 60,500 of a reduction for every $8,407 is 0.01 mil. So if we take that 60,500, 8,407, I believe it would be a 0.07 reduction, Tom, roughly. Did I get us to 0.88? Tom, should we move on, or you need to calculate? Okay. All right, so Tom will plug those numbers in, and we'll have an updated proposed mill rate shortly. But in the meantime, does anyone else have any changes? Open it up.
Yeah, I have some questions I'd like to ask Bob Shea, Chief Shea. Sure.
Well, if it's about the fire department, it's chief.
No, I
It's
know,
not
that's
school, it's Bob.
Bob, I know, that's why I changed it to Chief.
Okay.
Put your other hat on, Bob.
Bring the right binder.
Which page are we on?
We're going to be on 45. Ready?
Ready.
All right. So last week, I met with Bob in his office up at the middle school, going over the track with him. He gave me a spec sheet, and we discussed that. And while we were there, we were going over the fire department budget. And we had discussed some of the changes where we could, take some money out of the budget. And initially, I wanted to take it out of the equipment supplies because of the increase in what we have spent. And we had talked about that. One of the reasons why he increased that is we're holding on to engine 2 longer because of the bidding process and the length of time to get the new fire truck. Engine 3, we're starting to see some problems right now. It's in the shop getting a new fuel tank because the fuel tank was leaking. And then we had an incident with some gear with one of our firefighters who's a certified instructor. You want to elaborate on that, or?
Yeah, sure. So, since I've been chief, and probably many years prior to that, we've always assisted our fire schools, our regional fire schools, with instructors. That's basically how that school is run. It's run by directors and administrators, and then all the trained instructors throughout the state help their community schools, and we participate, and they work under their charter when they do that. They don't work under the town, so they're covered by insurance. The only thing that they haven't had, because of the great financial restraints of our fire schools related to bonding that hasn't been approved for many, many years. Some schools have bonding, some others don't. Even the ones that have been bonded and built are having difficulty paying to operate them because of the lack of funding which comes from the state level. So consistently, as an organization, we're looking for that. With that said, we supply our gear for those members who are members of our department to use for those training purposes. Unfortunately, we had an incident that happened in the town of Newington as part of Middlesex County Fire School. We were very lucky. They had a flashover situation. The member that was in the training at the time was one of ours, a very qualified member. Actually, he is a career firefighter from the city of New Haven, so he's certainly excellent. As far as I'm concerned, he saved those that were in that building training at that time, which is a good thing. But unfortunately, we lost and had some damaged gear. So we applied for the insurance, and we were denied. which we still don't understand, which I'm still working on. So I've requested copies of the insurance policy for the school, which I used to be very involved in years ago, as president, to review that and find out and get more information on why that loss was not covered. So we hope to recoup that, but that one particular loss was a $13,000 loss. So with that said, we're looking to somehow recover that money. Since then, I've written a letter to the state as well as all the instructors that are currently certified for Portland, and we no longer are offering that service until we can rectify the issue. So those little impacts make those incidents, which turned out to be, as far as a safety component, good. Our gear protected our firefighter probably more than all the gear that was there at the time, which is a good thing, and that's all I care about. But those are the types of things that we can't really continue to offer at the cost of what it takes to replace. If it happened 2 years ago, it probably would have been a $2,000 loss. Or 10 years ago, I should say. Would have been about a $2,000 loss. That's how much our gear and what we use on a daily basis costs. For me to outfit a firefighter to enter your structure to extinguish a fire, it's about $10,000, $13,000 each firefighter. So if you think about that, and I have 3 or 4 firefighters come in new that go to training, I have to outfit them. And if you look at our equipment line item, that could eat up just about half of our money just to get those guys in gear that they can operate. So it's getting difficult. Sean and I talked about that. I asked for $3,000 more. Basically, that was a set of gear to kind of increase that ability to kind of bring new gear in. The compliance in our gear has changed. We used to inspect it, and we used to either allow it or not. Now the inspection is gone. We have to inspect it every year, but after 10 years, including our helmets and our boots, everything that we wear, other than the SCBA, which is certified based on testing, is gone. You're non-compliant if you're wearing it. So we have to try to transition into that as well. We have a lot of gear that's much older than that we're starting to work on. So we're making sure our interior group is meeting specifications that we have to based on OSHA as well as NFPA standards, but we're losing some of that by cycling it down to those that are not interior, which is fine because they can wear that. But those are some of the challenges that we're facing. So it's, I can go in and I can say, I can't do it anymore. I need $160,000 for equipment, which would basically satisfy our requirements. But we don't do that. We try to, work as lean as we can. But someday things are going to go up. We went to 3 calls today, no apparatus. We are responding to emergencies for fire alarms and smoke in the building with my SUV and another SUV because we just don't have people. So we're struggling with that. That's something that in the future you're going to, I'm sure, have a good conversation. We should start those off the queue. But your volunteer numbers are remaining the same, but your qualified individuals to drive as well as fight fires with the new requirements is limited. Plus your average age is 55 right now for your interior group and growing. That's the scary part, is the age. So, yeah, there's a lot in this whole fire department budget that I talked to Sean about that, I don't want to labor on, but things are going to change. We've talked about equipment. We've talked about fire trucks and apparatus. We've talked about our EMS calls and our ability to really protect the town. I've had nothing but the greatest luck over 20 years of having probably the most incredible fire department and members that anyone can have as a chief. We don't have a commission. We run our business with this board to protect here in town, but it's getting extremely difficult to be able to make sure that we're covered to protect our citizens. It's getting tough. It's everywhere. I'm sure you read it. Everywhere. Thank God we don't have an ambulance, but we still have to be at the door to care for you before that ambulance gets here, which are being delayed more each and every day because they are stressed as well. So those companies that are coming in to transport our patients in town are being delayed. So we have to be there to assist with that medical care prior to us transferring that care over to them. So it's tough. You know, we have 2 main EMS responders during the day, if they're available. One is over 70 years old. So,
So, that being said, I thought about this last night and during the day today. I would like to take that $3,000, put it back into equipment supplies, and while looking at where we are with the electricity, we're only at total of 40%. Now, I'd like to take that $3,000 out of electricity.
so I know that that's Tom's line item, and, you know, I don't know what the projections are for the future for power. I do know that we've tried to make some improvements in our facilities. I think we're wreaking some of one of those is fixed. That is an LED project that we have a fixed payment schedule on that. But the other 2 firehouses that we were able to retrofit, we did that on our own, and I'm hoping to see some savings there, which I mean, I can't say, but I'm hoping that some of these numbers are showing some of those savings, because we did have an increase in power, and I still think we're looking good. So I think the number would have to be more comfortable with Tom, but those are difficult. Heating, fuel, electricity, those are the line items that we really don't touch ourselves. We leave that to the finance director.
Tom?
You know, I mean, you're taxing the number, but what you're gonna try to do, you can. I mean, we have seen some improvements this year, but, distribution's always a tricky situation. And that brings that down to 2,700, below what we have budgeted this year, which is below the actual last year, but it's targeting around, what we're projecting this year. Hopefully some of those LED projects have made improvements. But I'm just still a few months left in the year. Wanna try it, try it.
Thoughts from the board? Is there consensus with that?
If, my thought is if we wanted to try and leave that with a little bit more of a buffer, what about if we reduced water and sewer? The past couple of years has been 2,200 and 2,300, and we're budgeted for 4,750. We could reduce that 1,000 and reduce electrical 2,000. It would leave more in the electrical fund.
I like that idea better.
Say that again. Do what, 1 and 2? Is it?
Take 2 from electrical and take 1,000 from water and sewer.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think there's more room in that.
It appears that way. Tom, any comments on that? No?
All right.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
I
Thanks,
appreciate
Bob.
it, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Makes it a little easier.
So just to recap for Sharon, then, equipment remains, will go up again from the 80,000 that was reduced, by 3,000 last night to 83,000, so we'll put that back. And then, count 62002, water and sewer, that will be reduced by $1,000 to 3,750. And then, electricity, 62001 will be reduced by 2,000. So it will go from 31,700 to 29,700.
Thanks.
You know, I mean, I agree with the change. I know, I thought a lot about the change that was made yesterday, and the reality is that we're gonna have to put out whatever it is that fire needs. So it's not like some of the other services where, okay, you go without this or that, but whatever Bob Shea is gonna need to make sure that his team is safe, we're gonna have to. So, I mean, I think that's a fair change to try to make an adjustment, but at the end of the day, that's one of those situations where we're gonna have to dig into contingency if we had to, because there's nothing more important than the safety of our community.
Agreed. Well said. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Ralph. Anyone else? Where to next? Oh. Oh, do you have updated numbers? 0.87. Okay. So, started yesterday at 0.96, and we're now at 0.87.
I have something for the library.
Okay.
Page 99.
Okay. We did have a reduction in the library, remember, already.
Yep.
What do you got?
For books and digital media, I want to give them an increase, but if we could reduce the increase. So if we put books at 49 even, and digital media at 12,000. So you take 500 from one and 750 from the other.
So a reduction of $1,250?
Yeah.
I don't know, what's everyone think on that? Thoughts?
I mean, I think we went through this last year. I don't know. I know I listened, I go and I'm liaison with them and I listen to it, and the numbers are going up in terms of activity. We're approaching the numbers we had before. It's such a small number to me. I just don't know if it, we look at it, to make real numbers, you have to do huge cuts. And we're not looking to do that. We're trying to do fair cuts, I think, across, and it's a small number. I'm just not sure if it's really gonna make much of a difference in the scheme of things, but I don't know what other people's think.
That was my feeling. I mean, we listened to her presentation last night, and people are back to using the library. It's a busy place, and I know we're looking for cuts, but from what she said last night, it sounds like we should get people to read books instead of electronic media. It's a lot less expensive, but you still have to present them with something, that the ability to put new books on the shelves when they turn over. I don't know, for that small amount, I don't know if it's worth the cut. The reality is, if the folks in Portland aren't happy with what we propose, we're gonna have to find some bigger cuts than that anyway.
Yeah.
I'm on the opposite end where I think it's
What's
such
that?
I'm on the opposite end there, Ryan. Oh,
Hold
I think,
hold on, say that,
Tom is
thank you,
saying-
Tom. For an increase? Yeah. So by reducing that 7,500 in the regular payroll, we're at 3.01% of an increase.
Yeah.
I think, for me, that's a pretty solid number, but.
well, what Bobby's saying is there is an increase. Maybe year by year, we just step it up minimally to see where they're at. Like, why go so big? I know it's not big, but
It's a
why go?
$1,000,
It's
yeah.
$1,000.
But still, I mean, last year we sat here and we were nickel and diming.
I know,
Tr-
and we
training for
ended up
$50.
giving them back the money last year after it was said and done.
Yeah, but I mean, we're supposed to go through every line item. Let's just go a little bit. Like, we're not asking to take everything. We're not keeping it flat. We're giving them the increase. And if you look at the budget line item for digital, they're at 49% with 3 months left. So they're not using the money in digital videos and digital media, so.
What are they spending right now for books?
Well,
Well,
Jan, why don't you come up and please, yeah, thanks.
The current numbers on here, but I'm thinking there's some things encumbered and, we do have some dollars encumbered. I don't know, did you consider that, Mike, just to make sure? I don't have my sheet in front of me. And
I got your line item
and there was
here.
still 49%.
Well, it was wrong, it's 46.9.
Where it's at, well, yeah. Okay, yeah, but I will say, if we buy an order of ebooks, it's like $1,000 could be gone. So we have to hold off till later in the year. We don't spend it all up. And Tom is good and controls our budget, and we can't, we know we're gonna pretty much spend that budget. We can easily do it with our demand and what the cost of things within the next month or so. But, we can't do it. We have to parcel it out, and we don't get POs open for the whole, $40,000 or something. We have to be careful. So that's, I think it would be spent up and needed to be spent as far as what we think we need for our people coming in. Again, those e-books are, they're a chunk of it, and even if we don't get them, I'm getting things that, I wait till the end of the year, I get some book that's $60, or should I get that, or $100, and I wait on those to make sure we've got the dollars, so.
So yeah, almost $5,000 left with 3 months to go. You will burn through all that?
We could
Or
very,
you sure you
yeah,
burn through all that?
yeah, we will.
And I think to use superintendent as a comparison last night, talking about you don't know what you're gonna get, the class sizes, the kids coming in, it sounds to me like what you explained last night, the library usage is returning to pre-COVID levels. And we provide that for young children, for school-age kids, for seniors. I don't think that amount is worth the cut. I mean, I'm looking at books right now, and in the current year, we got 14% left. We've got 6,900 available. We have 16,000 encumbered, and we've spent 25,000. And this is on a year where I don't think, I would venture to guess the numbers of folks that use the library were down this year as opposed to what you're gonna see, what you're seeing now and you're seeing trending towards the new year, so.
Yeah, it seems like it's going up. Excuse me. The last few months have been really busy. I mean, there are some studies that say every dollar you invest in a library, you make out $4 to $5 for your community, for your economic and for your, and if you look at what the average person gains who uses the library regularly, it can be a few $100s a year to, $1,700 if they do all the services with their family.
Right.
Kids are, so it's, it's money that, it's sort of prepaid services for people, but it's a lot of money, but it is valuable to the patrons.
Jan, I have just one question, because I don't remember. I remember that you were using endowment funds to try to get by on some of the services that were provided, or subscriptions, whatever.
Oh, right.
Did you, is that still, I can't remember.
There's a,
Highland. Is it
this
still
is,
part
yeah,
of
and out of the, we have a state grant every year. That's right, we'd be getting 7,000 something in the next few weeks from this annual grant. When we get a lot of usage, it's another thing, we do get some money back when we net, people come in from other towns and use us more than our people go to other towns. We gain some money with that. So that's what we've been using to fund the Hoopla service,
Okay, so
which
that's what you
provides
said.
e-books that are always available. They're not the latest, greatest usually, but they're something that people, so they don't have to wait, have nothing, yeah. I mean, yeah, wish we could say everybody come in the door and take out a book. Like I said, it would be less expensive, but, and we'd like to see them. But unfortunately, the way people live, they're just, they use their phone or their laptop or whatever. It's a big thing that they do. Yeah.
Mike, you came, I know you had another meeting, just so you know what the discussion is. We're on page 99, and the proposal was to reduce books by $1,000, or $500, excuse me, $500?
Yeah.
And so from 49,500 to 49,000, and then discs, video, and digital media from 12,750, a reduction of, was it 750?
Yeah.
750. So to bring it to 12,000. Which, but previously I had reduced the regular payroll after Tom and I went through again, and we did see there was a $7,500 reduction that we made it prior to that. That currently the percentage increase, the overall percentage increase to the library with that reduction that I proposed was 3.01% of an increase, down from the 3.97.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah. So I don't know how you feel. I'm kind of.
I know how he feels.
He knows exactly how I feel. So I, because it's such a small amount of money, I mean, and because it's such a small amount compared to the importance of books and people going to the library, I mean, if it was $10,000 and they could afford, you know what I mean? But it's a small amount. It's almost, it's a token amount that I would say, no, I would not be comfortable with that.
Yeah, I don't think there's consensus on that. on this
Okay.
one. Unless, yeah, if you wanna take a vote.
Nope. I know where everyone stands.
Anything else? Thank you, Jan. Anywhere else? Or two? That's a good. Are we done? So,
I just see some nickels and dimes, I don't see anything.
you guys tell me. What are we at, Tom? Just to recap one more time with our mill rate of 0.87 right now for an increase? Okay. And I just want to, for the record, that 0.87 would be lower if the mill rate on motor vehicles wasn't capped at that 32.46 from the state. So when Tom and I were working on the budget, we got to a number that we liked, and then we had to factor in that motor vehicle cap, and that raised the mill
Just out
rate.
of curiosity, what was what was roughly the number before you?
I don't, it was better than
Yeah.
the 0.96 that we ended up at, much better. Probably closer to where we're at now. But yeah, that affected us, unfortunately. And that could change. You don't know what's gonna happen in Hartford, so.
You never know.
You never know.
So I'm just gonna give a general statement about the budget and what my opinion is. I think it's a good budget. It's a small increase relative to where we're sitting. And in the a year where we're dealing with inflation off, that's crazy. We don't know where it's gonna go. I think it's a fair number to put on it or an increase. The only thing I would say is looking forward. Now, I will tell you, I've sat and listened to long-range capital discussions for, I'm thinking it was 16 years now. Because I started doing it as chair of Park and Rec, and I sat in those discussions, and now I've done it 6 years as a liaison and listened to discussions as well. The challenge we have is that, and I understand this is a good, given the circumstances, is a fair increase in taxes. But we have the situation where we continue to push everything down the street. And the challenge is that I truly believe within 5 years, we're going to be paying firemen during the day. And I believe, obviously, that in a year from now, we may be voting on a very large bond for the schools. So the problem is we have these windows, we need to take advantage and try to do something to establish putting and taking care of some of those items that aren't long-range capital. And I understand why this year we landed similar numbers that we've landed for like the last 5 years that I've been on the board. We have a certain amount of money that we put towards it. We seem to be favorable in terms of money we have coming back at the end of the year. We have some fund balance that we could utilize, and we do a decent amount, but it's so small compared to the bigger bite that we gotta take in terms of, and I just worry that we're on a path where at some point they're all gonna collide, and that's my concern, is we're sitting at, a really big number somewhere down the road. And I don't have a solution. I'm not telling you I have the solution, because one way or another we have to pay for it, but that is the challenge. It's things on that the long-range capital items, there's not a lot of things on there that are nice to have. There's a lot, we talked at length about the mower yesterday. Ryan he's just happy to get one of them. He's like, okay, just give me one of them and I'll be happy. And that fire truck scares me, because the strategy we've used in the past with leasing may not play into what we can utilize next year when we say, okay, now this is the year we're gonna start putting money away for it. So I just want people to be mindful of our situation, and I'm just fearful of what's coming, and it's, you know, again, I don't know what you do. To make big changes in your budget, you're talking about slashing huge amounts of your services, and then when we listened to people yesterday at the meeting, hearing, talk about how I love Portland and why I wanna be in Portland. If you slash all the services, then it's maybe not as favorable to be here, so, it is something, a strategy, and I know Sean and I have talked about it. We've talked about if you did open up a charter, and you've talked about having a certain dedicated amount that would be put towards capital every year, and that's something that could be, obviously, we've talked about whether that would be a discussion. Right now, we don't have that, but it's something that could be considered in the future, so. I'm happy with the budget the way it is. I know my fellow selectmen worked really hard to try to come up with some cuts so that we could see that we're doing our due diligence to try to make it as best we can, and I appreciate that. And so I think it, it kinda sits with a number that I'm happy where we are, and I just worry about, we have to come up with a strategy for the future to try to deal with all we're gonna have coming.
I have a statement I'd like to make too. It's about the Board of Ed budget, and then, so I'm gonna read this because my thoughts are all over the place, but, so after many, many hours of watching the Board of Ed meetings and their deliberations, researching in depth their financials, hearing what they get for grants and other sources of funding, and most of all, the help from my friends on the Board of Education. Our findings were that next year's Board of Ed budget can support a 2.61% budget increase, in a very healthy manner, and still allowing some wiggle room. Also, let's not forget the gift of a nearly $1.3 million tract that was just handed to them by the taxpayers of Portland at zero cost to the Board of Education. So let's not mistake this as a cut, because that is what it's not. It is merely a negotiation to a 2.61% increase over last year's budget, and that would be my proposal in a discussion for the rest of the Board of Selectmen. So that's kind of where I'm standing. I'm okay with the municipal side budget right now where we stand. If you guys would like to talk about the Board of Selectmen, or Ralph, it sounds like you're okay with where it's at, but that's kind of what I'm proposing, and what are your thoughts?
What would the dollar amount?
What are you looking for?
On that, Mike?
It was just a 2.61% budget increase opposed to the 3 point, whatever it was there,
3.6.
yeah.
Do you have a number?
I do not.
What's that? An additional, yeah. Well, Dr. Britton, well, let's open it up. What's everyone's thoughts on that? Does anyone want to?
So Michael, when you were going through that, what did you identify when you reviewed the budget as the places that you would suggest to cut?
Again, I'm not cutting anything. We took into consideration the cost of increase of the payroll, insurances, all of that stuff, all the stuff you don't touch. And then we took into account of adding, some of those extra, what do we call them, the teacher assistants, stuff like that. And basically with the declining student, or not declining, but it hasn't been increasing in student enrollment. And now with the added students that you're getting from Hartford, that's what the numbers equated out to. That's kind of the basics of what we did.
Okay.
Most of those numbers there were based upon the grants that they were receiving and the outsource of funding from like Oak Hill and stuff like that, and what Hartford gets for open choice and.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I just want to make sure, do any of the selectmen have any comments before we invite Dr. Britton up?
No, I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, would you? Thanks, Charlie.
She's on Zoom, yeah. Did you have questions specifically, or just want me to comment on where that would be? So I just want to make sure I understand what you're suggesting, and Tom did the math quicker than I could. I was at 300. That would be the 77,000 plus the additional reduction of 1%. That's a $312,000 reduction from the 3.98 that the board adopted. Is that's what we're talking about to get to the 2.64? Is that not, so I guess I'm just curious, 312,000, did you see that in grants? Like you found $312,000 in grants? That's what you were looking at?
Like I said, I don't have all those numbers in front of me, but it was the estimates. It was like, you guys are aiming high. I wasn't aiming low, but I was aiming in the middle of what you guys were anticipating.
In terms
So
of in terms of the grant funding?
Correct.
Okay, so specifically, I mean, there's.
Okay, I wasn't really up for questioning you. I just said that's what the numbers we came up with. I don't have the specifics down.
I mean, Stephanie, you're here. I don't have that PowerPoint in front of me, but I'm sure you have it there at your disposal. If we want to take a look at the grant funding that, in terms of the ECS, the Title I, the Title III, that's there. I'm not sure where I would.
Every last penny that is in our budget is accounted for within ECF, excess cost, open choice, everything. $312,000 would be a massive, massive cut to us.
It would be a lot.
Not saying it wouldn't be.
It includes every single dollar that we are anticipating with 70 students, if we get 70 students. We may not get 70.
Yeah, that's a placeholder, and we receive $10,000 a student per student. Historically, Stephanie's budget is at 62. We're at 70 right now. We may not get 70. Right? I mean, that's one of those things in the budget that we don't know. As a matter of fact, I just literally got an email this week from, it's called RISCO. That's the lottery. They're just starting now. We won't find out how many open choice students we get. Now even within open choice, that would be another 31 students that we would have to go from 70 students to 110 to make up that kind of difference. And we definitely haven't opened 110 seats to open choice. I'm not even sure if we could at this point. That would involve a lot. That would be a pretty big change.
I just have one question for you, Don. And I know I read it somewhere or saw it in one of your presentations, what is the total cost per student per year to educate?
Do you have that, the per pupil expenditure?
I'd have to look it up right now. I don't have it in front of me, but if you give me 1 minute, I can look.
Do you have it rough?
Yeah, some 17,000 or so.
So is it more than the 10,000 per student we get from
Open choice.
open choice?
It is.
It is. Now, are there any other benefits associated with bringing an open choice student if it's gonna cost, if we're not getting a break even?
Well, don't forget, we also don't pay for transportation for open choice. That's
Okay, so
covered.
that's
So
covered.
there are other things that go into it.
Which
and
would bring the cost up.
significantly. And if those students come to us with other specialized services, I mean, what's interesting, what's difficult about per pupil expenditure some students in the town of Portland, we spend over $200,000 a year on, with specialized medical needs and transportations and residential outplacements or other things. Most students certainly don't cost that amount, but that's an average. You know, that's the difficulty with averaging. If you have 10 students and one's 200,000, the others might be $1,000 a year, right? You know, so it's not entirely apples to apples.
So it's students overall, you don't take the
Correct.
ones that need special needs or anything out of it?
No,
Okay.
we don't do that, right? And you know, and some of our students receive lots of individualized support.
Right.
Some have one-on-one paraprofessionals, some receive speech and language services. You know, so here it is, so I've got it here. It's 19,180.
Okay.
But again, that's an average. The average student who is not receiving any services and, you know, it would be significantly, it'd be difficult. It'd be very difficult to calculate that fairly. That, again, that's what happens with, you know, descriptive statistics when you talk about the mean, right? It can be skewed one way or the other.
Right, yeah. No, I understand. I just wondered why that's always talked about per pupil.
Yeah, and you know, I can
per
pass this
class.
down. I don't know, you guys all just sort of take a look at that. That's an interesting comparison there for you.
What's worth noting about that is that our per pupil expenditure puts us in the bottom third of the entire state by district in terms of how much we spend to get our students.
You have a Charles?
Yeah, it's going, they're taking a look at it.
I'm just looking at some of these towns that I know are smaller than
Well,
ours.
a lot of those towns, don't forget, that are smaller are paying tuition because they don't have their own high schools.
Right, okay.
They may only have
regionalized.
a
They're
pre-K
regional,
six school,
okay.
they're part of a region, they have to tuition those students out. And that's
Got
what
it.
you're, and there are also, in some of those towns that you're looking at, very few students. It's a difficult description. I've never liked the consideration
That's why
for
I'm
pupil
wondering why
expenditure. It's skewed.
why it's
skewed in
used.
significant ways. I mean, you get a general sense when you look at across the state averages. You know, we would want to compare ourselves to towns similar to Portland. What's interesting to me about Portland is we're always generally, you know, in the 30th percentile or so. That's what you want to look at. But you know, to say, hey, we're receiving $10,000 a student. Is that a good deal or a bad deal or not? You know, you can't answer that because it depends on the student, you know, and the needs that student brings. Because we always, you know, we'll make sure that the students get what they need, and some students need, you know.
Well, that's why I asked the question, because I saw that, and I remember seeing a per pupil, and
Yep.
to me it seemed like, why would we do that if we're not getting the full amount? But when you talk about we're not paying for their transportation and any other special needs they have, then that.
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
What is, you mentioned comparing to towns that are similar to ours.
Mhm.
I know, and you're absolutely right, when you get into small towns like in eastern Connecticut, I'm sure their budgets are smaller, but their pupil numbers are certainly smaller, and there's an awful lot of towns our size that are regionalized. Are there what would you put out there as the couple towns that are similar to us that maintain their own school system right through high school?
East Hampton, you know, certainly East Haddam, Coventry. Those are the towns I would look to. Maybe Plainfield, type of thing. Granby, well, Granby's maybe a little higher socioeconomic bracket, but you know, you know, think of high schools with fewer than 500 students, and that's our ballpark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just comment that the 312,000 would be a lot, right? I mean, that'd be very complicated situation for us. And I just want to give you an example. And Stephanie's here, and she can give you some details of what I'm about to explain. Earlier this year, we were in a position where Stephanie was starting to say numbers to me like $400,000 deficit, Charles, $500,000 deficit, Charles, and whoa. Now, that deficit went away when, we hired the right person in-house because we had a vacancy and we're paying for contracted services instead of bringing those services in-house. And with that one hire, that deficit was almost eliminated. And then, of course, you've probably read about it, we received a grant and that deficit was again eliminated, right? So over the course of 6 weeks, we went from a potential of $400,000 deficit to right back on budget. It changes by the week, by the day of this week. I would say to Stephanie, Stephanie, what's your projection? She said to me literally Monday, I think we're gonna end the year $7,000 in the hole. I talked to her today, well, I just got this round of bills, I think we're $868 surplus, right, Stephanie? I mean, literally, that's what's happening. It's changing by the day, and what Stephanie will tell you, I know she's gonna say, I don't know what our excess cost grant is yet, right? It's such a complicated thing that our budget number is moving all the time, right? That we are gonna, I think we're gonna land the budget this year on the number, right? Stephanie, I mean, fill that in, because maybe you can give some more examples of which way the wind blows, and in some days you're saying we're $7,000 in the red, and some days we're $7,000 not, right? Like, just give some examples of that, because the last thing I want is to be in a position where I'm coming to you with my tin cup at some point in the year asking for a supplemental because we're in a deficit position. If we took a cut like this now, yeah, it would likely mean, I'll just be completely honest, and this would be the reality, that kind of cut we don't make up for in pencils, right? That kind of reduction we're talking about in people, right? And likely what that means then is either fewer support services for students or larger class sizes, or likely a combination of both, right? Again, Stephanie, just to illustrate for everybody, talk a little bit about some of the complications you have even this early in the year, and it's almost April, in terms of giving us a projection and why we might come July 1 and find ourselves with a healthy surplus or zero surplus in a deficit position. And then, of course, how we mitigate that literally day by day.
The biggest thing I can say is look at line 56003. That's the special ed tuition, I think it's the tuition line. From where we were budgeted 18 months ago to where we are now, that large difference in between that is what we're trying to cover right now. So when Dawn did her budget this year and she put it at that number right now, that's what we're working with. And so that $400,000 or 64% increase, I don't have the number in front of me right now, but that's what I'm trying to fill with excess costs and saving money and a freeze. And that's why we start where we start. If you got cut $312,000, we have to do the special ed needs. You can't cut in those places. Like Charles said, the only other place to cut is positions in regular ed, larger class sizes. I mean, that's the biggest example I can use is the 56003. Just looking at that line compared to last year, compared to this year, and that's what we're dealing with right now.
And all I would suggest too is you'll hear, I know you're going to hear, and many of you are aware of this, and Bob's right here, and I'm sure his head will nod, even though I can't see him. We're on borrowed time with a lot of our facilities, right? I can't see him. I imagine his head is breaking. This is a hope that we don't get, a storm doesn't rip through here or something serious doesn't break, right? I mean, Bob and our crew do amazing work keeping it together, but to cut us back on that, is frightening, right? And that when we get to the end of the year and we do have a surplus, a lot of, and Ralph was talking about it tonight, that deferred maintenance things, those things that we do kick the can on, we do our best to fill those back in, and we just met this morning with Bob and identified some truly critical projects that we really need to be on top of. And as soon as we start cutting back, that again, I don't wanna ever be in a situation where I'm here saying, you know, I need a supplemental of 250,000, or a school's not gonna open Monday, right? Because we have these type of emergencies, but truly, you know, come on up to Valley View when the wind blows the right way and it's a rainy day, right? And you'll see what I mean. There are real issues that, you know, we're on borrowed time with. So the more we start chipping away at the budget and eating away at any kind of buffers, not only is it gonna affect the academic side of it, but there's no hedge against any potential. Even though we have Fund 11, which right now, thank goodness we have it, it's not great. Bob, do you want to add anything to that, or at least, I can't see you, but I'm sure you're nodding and.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the mark. Our meeting this morning was trying to prioritize. Yeah.
Well, Charles, you know how much you have in Fund 11 right now?
Stephanie, what's the balance Fund 11?
It was $267,000, give or take. With many projects needed to be done.
Yeah, we have many projects. Just this week alone, I've estimated over $60,000 worth of work that needs to be done. Half of that needs to be done. Those were the items that we spoke about this morning, and how we're going to try to fund those and move on those so that I can get them done prior to school opening in August. And the problem is the delay in materials and making sure that we can get that stuff done this budget cycle, or if it's Fund 11 before school opens. So those are difficult things. Our, you know, 8:30 this morning, our fire alarm system at Gildersleeve went down. It's got a condition where it alarms every 30 seconds, which if you want to sit next to that, you're going to have a really good day. There is no way to stop that other than taking it offline. It is functional, but it has that alarm that we can't disconnect. We've had 2 companies out to take a look at it, other than shutting the system down, which we can't do. So we're dealing with that now, but that has to be retrofitted. There's no panels for that. We need a new panel, which means we need new smoke and heat detectors, because the ones that are in that school do not comply with the new panel. So, you know, you're looking at an $18,000 retro, and that's going to have to happen as quick as we can, hopefully by April vacation, if we can steal parts. If we can negotiate with other schools or companies that can wait a month or 2, and we can take their components and make that change. So those are the types of things we deal with every day. We just don't know when you turn the lights on in the morning or the phone calls you get at night. But we do know that we have a list of stuff that really needs to be taken care of, or we're going to have some issues related to heat in the wintertime, and some concerns with AC in the schools that have it, and then just the overall climate of the schools. So, you know, we're struggling with that. I came to Dr. Britton with a request in the very beginning of what I thought was greatly needed. It wasn't a wish list. It was more of a, we could be in trouble. And we reduced that by $234,000 right off the bat. So I'm still trying to make up for that. So that's kind of where we are facilities-wise. So, I mean, more to come. I'm learning each and every day, but these buildings are extremely expensive to keep open, so.
Any other questions for Dr. Britton, while he's up here, or Stephanie? Please. Everyone good? No questions?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, guys. I want to point out that after we went through the budget yesterday and today, I believe my calculations are, we reduced the general government expenditures $17,000. $17,010 with that.
That's right.
Additional adjustment. But, I mean, that's what we reduce the general government expenditure side. So, you know, to me, $235,000 seems very, very large.
So I'll just say one more thing, probably, it kinda goes along with what I said before, but it goes along with, I'm sure, some of the frustration that Mike might be feeling is, you know, certainly the track thing was kind of a curveball that wasn't really expected. And all of a sudden, you're sitting at a lot more money than we thought we were gonna have to put out for the track. And I'll be honest with you, I sat there and I was conflicted when I was thinking about how I would go on voting on this. But what it really came down to, as I looked at, is, yes, we have other things we probably look at, but I know we're not gonna decide all of a sudden, we're not gonna have a track at the high school, because unless that was gonna be a decision possibly made, you're going to be doing that track again. So now, what would happen? If we didn't do it this year, coming up, we'd probably say, let's wait for the bonding to happen. Okay, so now you're adding 2 or 3 years to it, which probably in all likelihood means another $200,000 that you're adding to the cost.
And
You're
losing,
putting-
potentially losing the money that we've got allocated.
Losing the $500,000 that we were getting from the state, and adding interest that you'd
Right.
have for 10, 15, 20, whatever the year of bonding is. So, to me, it hurt, but I'm a numbers person, so in my mind, I'm thinking, at the end of the day, it cost us less to do the track now than it would have cost if we waited 2 years from now with the bond. And that's kind of how I rationalized my thought on that. And so, it's frustrating. I just talked about long-range capital, and, but unfortunately, that's just what kind of came with this, and sometimes these things happen. So I think overall, the move to do the track now saves the residents money in the long run. Obviously, there's other things that get pushed aside that don't get done, and that hurts.
I guess a question that I would have for the board is, with the budget as is currently, are you okay with it? Or are there further reductions that you would like to make on the general side or the Board of Education side?
I think there's always, right, we're voted to come up here. Everyone expects us to keep their taxes as low as we can, so I think we're up here, in our mind, I know me, I'm like, well, what can I do to make everyone happy? And at the end of the day, after looking through the general budget, and like we all said, we're taking 1,000 here, 3,000 here, 2,000 here, whatever, to come up with, what was that, $17,010. I think if you walked into a party of 100 people and said, hey, we saved you $17,010 out of the budget, you wouldn't be getting the response you think you would get. I mean, it's difficult being up here. You know, when I was sitting where everyone is out there, I was always like, what are you doing? You're not cutting it enough. But I think we're doing the best with what we have. But I think Ralph is right. I think when we get that phone call from Bob Shea or whoever the next chief is and says, hey, you got 6 months to start hiring, we're gonna be looking at a mill or 2 mill rate increase to take care of things that we haven't put in long range, to fund a daytime staff, fire department, a paid chief. So, yeah, I don't know, it's just thoughts that go through my head, and where are we headed with all of this down the road?
That's the scary part.
Right.
It's not necessarily what we're dealing with now, but it's knowing what we're gonna have to deal with. We've, throughout this year, we've heard about sewer plant upgrades. We know that there's schoolwork that's coming down the road. The water, that we got all these things that are stacking up. Those are gonna be costs coming down the road. But I also know, and I agree with you, Sean, I mean, you're sitting out there as a taxpayer saying, You know, there's gotta be something else you can cut. The reality is, I've been back and forth through this book 36 times. And, you know, this year, we as a board made the decision. We tried to save the taxpayers some money by leveraging those federal funds. That one major purchase of a fire truck, we have to look at what that saved the taxpayers. I mean, you cannot look at that item. And then the other, I mean, we're here to represent everybody, from the single adolescent kids to the new parents with young kids, to the kids in our school systems, to, you know, folks my age and folks older than me. And you know, we allocated some of those funding for that van for the senior center.
Right.
It was a travesty what those folks are riding around in town with. You know, they talked about holes in the floor. You know, so I looked at it as we purchased a fire truck and a van for our elderly citizens without having to impact their budget. We know this year we spent a little more on the police department getting them another officer, but for God's sakes, I mean, my East Main Street, my niece's car, 6 houses up the street, was stolen out of her driveway at 5 o'clock in the morning and showed up in the Bronx. And then we had the incident down on Maple Avenue with somebody go in there shooting up the house. All these things that we have spent money on this year, there's no fluff, and I said this last night, there's absolutely no fluff in this budget. We need to make sure that our taxpayers get what they expect, but that our children get well educated, that our houses are safe in case of a fire, that we're safe walking down the street at night, and all these things come into this budget. You know, quite honestly, I mean, I thought last night I was satisfied with what we have. Is there more we can cut? Absolutely. Dr. Britton explained, but, you know, I got a daughter that's a teacher. I got 2 sister-in-laws that are teachers. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 nieces and nephews that are teachers. I know what they go through, and I know what they went through during COVID. You know, and you know, we talked about our first responders during COVID, and absolutely, firefighters and police officers, but our teachers were first responders too. You know, and our kids deserve that support. You know, I think we put forward, I'm comfortable putting forward what we have here, and if the taxpayers want more from it, then we go back and we sharpen our pencils, and we unfortunately have to cut. But at this point in the game, you know, $1,000 here, $1,000 there, isn't making a huge difference. Just my 2 cents.
I'm gonna add 2 more if I could. I'll try to keep it to 2. So I understand the frustration and the different angles too. And as Sean said, and I think it's a great point, you know, we're beholden, we were elected to look at the budget and be as careful as we can with town money. I think it's actually something that's a positive that we can only find 17,000, because it's a reflection on Ryan and Tom looking at it carefully, spending their time, doing the best thing, and Tom's an expert at the numbers, Ryan's an expert at the numbers now. So I believe that they came with the best budget possible. There's always things you can nibble away at. Some funds don't get used as much one year versus another. There's always that kind of variation, but the big number that I think we have, I feel comfortable with. Regarding Board of Ed, we have Dr. Britton, we have the Board of Ed team, we have a number of people that are experts on their side. The question mark with the, you know, special education budget. I trust their judgment on really virtually all of this, but like Reagan said, trust but verify, and verifying is perfectly fine. I understand Mike's frustration too. It's a big number. You know, the Board of Ed budget's 2/3 of our total budget. It's a lot of money. But I feel comfortable in what I've heard so far, especially with the unknowns that we have. But yeah, if the town felt that, you know, we need to go back, if they didn't approve what we agreed to today, or however the process rolls out, then we'll have to go back and do what we can. But I feel pretty comfortable with it. I don't think we'd find that many more dollars. And if we got 17,000 on our side, ours is 1/3 of the budget, you know, are we gonna find $34,000 on their side? You know, if we balance out the same percentage, maybe we'd probably find it. And maybe we could still look for some of that, but I can't see bigger dollars unless we do a big change to the plan that the ones that know that side of the budget have proposed are suggesting, so. That's my 2.5 cents, I guess. A little bit more.
We'll go down the line. Bobby, how do you feel?
I'm fine. Sean?
I already spoke, I think.
Yeah, you did.
Ralph, you spoke. Yes, sir. Yeah.
I spoke.
Mike spoke.
Yep, I'm not gonna get my money, so, I like Mike's idea, if you guys wanna do 2/3 of, cut 34,000 out of the Board of Ed, that'd be equal in comparison to what we cut, something. You know, if we're 2/3 the budget, 34,000, we did 17, they do 34, and call it a day.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah. I like that number.
I think it's a fair.
I think it's a fair ask. You ask for a pony, you get a puppy.
Okay. Is that, so there's a proposal to reduce the Board of Ed budget by 34,000?
Yes.
Is anyone opposed to that? Tom, could you tell us what that would do? Right now, we were at 0.87. Remember, we started the evening with it was a 0.95, so yesterday we cut 0.01 off the mill rate, and today we're doing a little bit better by. So we
The last
started
we
on,
were at.
yeah, what's that?
No, I thought I wrote it down, but we were before this.
So the total of 34,000, that's plus 37,000, 11,000. That would bring you to the 3.49%
And just what, Dr. Brenton, Charles, do you have anything, would that impact students, services, anything?
Definitely better than 312. I mean, let's start there. We'll land on a few.
What's that, 0.83? Better than 0.96. So seems there's consensus on that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Think we're done after that?
I think so.
I
I think we're
so.
done.
Okay.
Unless you wanna cut your salary.
Thanks, John. I guess with that, if no other selectmen have any comments, we'll close. Is there a motion to close?
I make a motion, we close.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? The time is 8:13 PM. Thank you, everyone, for